My child expressed a desire to meet new daddy. Compelled, I engaged a private detective, and was shocked to discover my wife's infidelity. The investigator then unearthed her most guarded secret. She will eternally remember the vengeance I exacted. In the quaint suburb of Willowridge, the home of Zephyr Hartley and his wife, Marigold, echoed the semblance of a picture-perfect life. Their daughter, Juniper, a sprightly 6-year-old with an imagination as wild as her curly hair, was the apple of their eye. Zephyr, a software engineer, and Marigold, a freelance graphic designer, had built a life that many envied, a beautiful home, successful careers, and a family bonded by love. But beneath the veneer of this idyllic existence, Zephyr sensed a disturbing change. Marigold had grown distant, her once bright eyes now often clouded with secrecy. She was frequently lost in her phone, smiling at texts that she hurriedly swiped away whenever Zephyr entered the room. He tried to dismiss these signs as mere figments of his overactive imagination. After all, they were still a family, weren't they? One evening, as Zephyr tucked Juniper into bed, she murmured sleepily, "When can I see the new daddy again?" Her innocent words struck Zephyr like a bolt of lightning. "What new daddy, Junie?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "The one mommy meets at the park," she replied, drifting off to sleep, unaware of the storm she had just ignited in her father's heart. That night, Zephyr lay beside Marigold, who was sound asleep, her breathing a soft rhythm in the quiet room. His mind raced with a tumult of emotions, confusion, hurt, disbelief. Was Marigold seeing someone else? Who was this new daddy Juniper mentioned? Questions swirled in his mind, each more unsettling than the last. The next day, Zephyr took a personal day off work. He drove aimlessly around Willowridge, his mind a whirlpool of thoughts. He needed answers but didn't know where to start. That's when the idea struck him, a private investigator. It seemed like a drastic step, but his need for the truth outweighed his reservations. He found an investigator named Boone Cassidy through a quick online search. Boone, a former police detective, had a reputation for being discreet and effective. Zephyr arranged to meet him at a secluded coffee shop on the outskirts of town. Boone was a grizzled man with piercing blue eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Zephyr explained his situation, his voice tinged with a mix of shame and desperation. Boone listened intently, nodding occasionally, scribbling notes in a weathered notebook. "Mr. Hartley, I'll do what I can to uncover the truth," Boone said, his voice as gravelly as his appearance. "But you need to prepare yourself. The truth isn't always what we hope it to be." Zephyr nodded, a lump forming in his throat. He handed Boone a photo of Marigold and a retainer fee. As Boone slipped the photo and the money into his jacket, Zephyr felt a strange sense of finality, as if he had just set in motion a series of events that could change his life forever. Driving back home, Zephyr felt a cascade of emotions, fear, anticipation, and a simmering anger. He thought of Juniper, her words echoing in his mind. He thought of Marigold, the woman he thought he knew. The road ahead seemed clouded with uncertainty, but one thing was clear: he was about to step into a world of revelations that could shatter his once tranquil existence. Weeks had trickled by since Zephyr Hartley's fateful meeting with Boone Cassidy, each day stretching taut with tension and unspoken questions. The once harmonious rhythm of the Hartley household had faltered, replaced by a stifling silence that hung heavy in the air. Zephyr watched Marigold with a veiled gaze, searching for clues in her every gesture, every smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Meanwhile, Juniper remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing between her parents, her laughter a stark contrast to the growing unease that enveloped the home. Then, on a crisp Tuesday morning, as autumn leaves danced in the breeze, Zephyr received a call from Boone. "We need to talk," the investigator's gruff voice crackled over the line. "Meet me at the Oakwood Diner in an hour." Zephyr's heart pounded as he sat across from Boone in a dimly lit corner of the diner. The investigator's face was stoic, but his eyes betrayed a hint of sympathy. Boone slid a manila envelope across the table. "What you're looking for is in there," he said. With trembling hands, Zephyr opened the envelope. Inside were photographs and a detailed report. The photos showed Marigold with another man, laughing, holding hands, their intimacy unmistakable. Zephyr's eyes traced the contours of the man's face, suave, confident, a stark contrast to Zephyr's own understated demeanor. He was someone Zephyr recognized, Castor Reed, a successful entrepreneur renowned in Willowridge for his business acumen and charismatic presence. As Zephyr absorbed the contents of the report, Boone's voice seemed to fade into the background. The investigator detailed how Marigold and Castor had been meeting secretly for months, their rendezvous carefully planned and executed with precision. Boone's words were factual, devoid of emotion, yet each sentence pierced Zephyr's heart like a shard of ice. "Do you know him?" Boone asked, noticing Zephyr's recognition of Castor. Zephyr nodded, his voice a mere whisper. He's someone I've always looked up to. Respected." The irony of the situation was not lost on him. His idol, the very epitome of success and charisma, was the one tearing his family apart. "And there's more," Boone continued, his tone hesitant. "Your wife, she's been helping Reed with some, let's say, not-so-legal business ventures. Money laundering, to be precise." The revelation hit Zephyr like a tidal wave, leaving him reeling. Marigold's betrayal was one thing, but her involvement in criminal activities was beyond his wildest imaginings. The woman he married, the mother of his child, was a stranger to him now. Zephyr left the diner with a heavy heart, the envelope's contents burning a hole in his mind. The drive home was a blur, his thoughts a chaotic whirlwind. He realized he had to confront Marigold, yet the prospect filled him with an indescribable dread. That evening, as Marigold prepared dinner, Zephyr sat her down. His voice was calm, but his hands trembled as he placed the photographs on the table. "Marigold, we need to talk," he began, his eyes searching hers for an iota of the love they once shared. The kitchen, once a haven of warmth and laughter, turned into an arena of truth and confrontation, as Zephyr braced himself for the inevitable storm that was about to break. In the aftermath of the confrontation, the walls of the Hartley home seemed to close in, heavy with the weight of unsaid words and shattered trust. Marigold's confession, amidst tears and pleas for forgiveness, did little to quell the tempest in Zephyr's heart. She spoke of loneliness, of feeling overshadowed by Zephyr's career, of finding solace in Castor's charismatic embrace. But her involvement in his shady dealings, that was a line crossed too far. Zephyr moved to the guest room, each night a battle with haunting images of Marigold and Castor, their laughter echoing in his mind, their secrets casting long shadows over his thoughts. In this labyrinth of betrayal, Zephyr found an unlikely confidant in Marigold's best friend, Lysandra. She had always been a constant in their lives, her vibrant energy in sharp wit a contrast to Marigold's more reserved nature. Lysandra reached out to Zephyr, her concern genuine, her words a balm to his wounded soul. They began meeting in secret, initially under the guise of shared pain and mutual support. Lysandra confessed her own disillusionment with Marigold, who had grown distant from her as well. Their conversations, filled with shared memories and laughter, became the only respite for Zephyr in a life that had turned upside down. One evening, as they sat in the secluded corner of a dimly lit cafe, Lysandra's hand brushed against Zephyr's. The touch, accidental yet electric, sparked an idea in Zephyr's mind, a plan of revenge. If Marigold could betray me so easily, Zephyr mused aloud, perhaps it's time she feels a taste of her own medicine. Lysandra's eyes widened, understanding dawning. You mean? Yes, Zephyr nodded. An affair. With you. Let her feel the pain of betrayal. Lysandra hesitated, the morality of the plan tugging at her conscience. But the hurt of being abandoned by her best friend, combined with the growing attraction toward Zephyr, tipped the scales. All right, she whispered. Let's do it. Their affair began as a carefully orchestrated play, each meeting, each touch, a deliberate act designed to inflict the maximum pain when eventually discovered. They left subtle clues, a lipstick mark on Zephyr's collar, a faint perfume scent, text messages deliberately left open. Yet, as their deception deepened, so did their connection. Their conversations grew more intimate, their chemistry undeniable. The lines between revenge and reality began to blur. Zephyr found himself torn between the exhilarating thrill of this new relationship and the lingering shadow of his marriage. Meanwhile, Marigold, lost in her own web of lies and regret, remained oblivious to the growing bond between her husband and her best friend. She attempted to bridge the growing distance, but Zephyr's heart had hardened, his eyes now only for Lysandra. As their secret affair blossomed, Zephyr began to question his motives. Was this truly about revenge, or had he unwittingly found solace in the arms of another? The complexity of his emotions left him adrift, caught between the past he could not return to and a future he had not planned for. The crisp air of Willowridge had begun to carry the chill of impending winter, mirroring the coldness that had settled in Zephyr Hartley's heart. His affair with Lysandra, initially a means of retribution, had transformed into a whirlwind of forbidden passion. Their meetings, once calculated performances, had evolved into genuine moments of connection and vulnerability. Zephyr found in Lysandra a kindred spirit, someone who listened to his deepest fears and offered solace without judgment. Their conversations often lasted into the early hours of the morning, a blend of laughter and earnest discussions about life, love, and the complexities of human emotions. Yet, despite the growing intensity of their relationship, the shadow of its inception, revenge, lingered. Zephyr couldn't shake off the guilt of using Lysandra as a pawn in his vengeful game against Marigold, even as his feelings for her deepened. Meanwhile, Marigold had started to sense the shift in Zephyr. His distant demeanor, the occasional slip-up in conversation, the unexplained absences, all pointed towards something amiss. She began to watch him closely, her suspicion a silent specter in their already strained relationship. One evening, as Zephyr returned home from a rendezvous with Lysandra, he found Marigold waiting for him in the living room, her eyes red-rimmed and weary. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Zephyr, caught off guard, mumbled something about a late work meeting. But the lie felt hollow, even to his own ears. Marigold's gaze didn't waver. "Zephyr, are you seeing someone else?" The directness of the question took Zephyr by surprise. He stood there, silent, the truth burning on his tongue but unable to break free. The moment stretched on, heavy with unspoken confessions. Finally, Zephyr muttered a denial and retreated to the guest room, his mind a turmoil of guilt and confusion. Lying in the darkness, he realized the toll their deception was taking. It was no longer just about him and Marigold. Lysandra, too, was caught in the crossfire of his vengeance. The following days saw Zephyr grappling with the consequences of his actions. His moments with Lysandra were tinged with a growing sense of unease. He began to question the morality of their affair, the legitimacy of their feelings amidst the web of deceit they had woven. As Zephyr and Lysandra met at their usual café, their conversation took a turn towards the future. "What are we doing, Lysandra?" Zephyr asked, his voice laden with conflict. "This started as revenge, but now I don't know what this is anymore." Lysandra reached across the table, her hand gently covering his. "I know this began in pain and anger, Zephyr. But what I feel for you now, it's real." Zephyr looked into her eyes, seeing the sincerity in them. A part of him wanted to believe in the possibility of a future with Lysandra, free from the shadows of their past actions. But the other part was shackled by guilt and responsibility towards his family. In the heart of Willowridge, under the bare branches of winter trees, Zephyr Hartley found himself walking a path lined with deceit and inner turmoil. His affair with Lysandra, once a covert operation fueled by vengeance, had morphed into a complex tapestry of genuine affection and remorse. Each stolen moment with her was a bittersweet reminder of the duplicity that had brought them together. Zephyr's home life with Marigold had become a charade of normalcy. Conversations were strained and superficial, with both parties skirting around the unspoken truths that lay between them. Juniper, their daughter, remained the only bridge of unfeigned joy and innocence in Zephyr's fragmented world. As the days passed, Zephyr's encounters with Lysandra grew more intense, yet the shadow of their original sin, revenge, loomed large. The initial thrill of secret meetings had given way to a gnawing guilt that tugged at Zephyr's conscience. The realization that he was no longer in control of his emotions was both terrifying and liberating. One evening, in the quiet confines of Lysandra's apartment, Zephyr found himself pouring out his heart, revealing his innermost fears and doubts. "Lysandra, what we have, it's become something I never anticipated. But I'm lost in this web we've woven. I feel like I'm betraying not just Marigold but also you, in a way," Zephyr confessed, his voice a mixture of despair and earnestness. Lysandra listened, her expression a blend of understanding and sorrow. "Zephyr, I never meant for things to go this far. But I can't deny what I feel for you. It's real, and it scares me," she replied, her voice trembling with emotion. Their conversation was a cathartic release, laying bare the complexities of their relationship. But it also served as a stark reminder of the precariousness of their situation. Meanwhile, Marigold's suspicion had turned into a quiet resolve to uncover the truth. Her husband's evasive answers and unexplained absences had fueled her determination. She began her own discreet investigation, piecing together clues and half-truths. The tipping point came unexpectedly. One afternoon, while Zephyr was at work, Marigold discovered a forgotten earring under their bed, an earring that didn't belong to her. The small, glittering piece of jewelry was the missing puzzle piece she needed. Confronted with undeniable evidence, Zephyr returned home to find Marigold waiting for him, the earring clutched tightly in her hand. "Who is she, Zephyr? Who?" Marigold demanded, her voice a mix of anger and heartbreak. The room felt suffocating as Zephyr struggled to find the words. The truth, harsh and unyielding, finally broke free. "It's Lysandra," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. The revelation hit Marigold like a physical blow. The betrayal by her husband was one thing, but the involvement of her best friend was a betrayal of a different magnitude.